The night my dad told me Grandma died ashamed of me, I was standing in my kitchen, staring at a sink full of dishes I didn't remember dirtying. My hands were still wrapped around my phone, the screen dark now, my reflection warped in it like I was already someone else, someone smaller, someone he had just folded in half with one sentence. "She asked about you at the end," he'd said, his voice low, almost gentle. "She was disappointed. I think she finally understood what kind of person you turned out to be." I remember laughing, this thin, ugly sound that didn't match how hard my heart was pounding. "That's not funny," I said. "Why would you joke about that?" He didn't laugh back. "I'm not joking." I slid down into a chair, the metal legs scraping against the floor too loud in the quiet apartment. "You're saying my grandmother, who raised me half my life, died ashamed of me?" There was a pause, just long enough to feel intentional. "I'm saying she knew the truth, and it broke her heart." After we hung up, I sat there until my tea went cold and the room felt unfamiliar, like I'd stepped into someone else's life. I kept hearing Grandma's voice in my head, sharp and warm at the same time. "You don't let anyone tell you who you are, baby, especially not family." I didn't cry that night. I think some part of me refused to give him that. Instead, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every visit I'd missed, every call I'd postponed because work was busy or life felt heavy. The guilt crept in anyway, quiet and poisonous. What if he was telling the truth? What if she had asked about me, and all he'd given her was his version of my life? The funeral was 3 days later. I sat in the back row, my hands folded so tightly my fingers went numb. My dad didn't look at me once. When people came up to offer condolences, they hesitated when they saw me, like they weren't sure if I belonged there. I heard whispers behind me. I felt them land on my back like small stones. After the service, my aunt brushed past me in the hallway, then stopped abruptly. "You didn't know?" she asked, her eyes wide. "Know what?" She glanced toward my dad, who was laughing softly with the pastor. "Never mind," she said quickly. "This isn't the place." That night, I drove back to my apartment in a fog, the radio off, the road stretching too long and empty. I kept thinking about the way my aunt had looked at me, like she'd almost said something dangerous. 2 weeks passed, then 3. I tried to move on, to file the whole thing under grief and complicated families, but the sentence my dad had dropped on me kept echoing, changing shape every time I replayed it. She knew the truth. It broke her heart. Then the letter arrived. It was forwarded from Grandma's old address, the return label half torn, my name handwritten in a shaky but unmistakable scrawl. My chest tightened so hard I had to sit down on the floor before opening it. Inside was a single envelope, yellowed at the edges. On the front, written carefully, were the words, "For her, only if I'm gone." My hands trembled as I slid the letter out. It was longer than I expected, folded twice, the paper thin and soft from being handled. "Baby girl, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get the chance to say everything I wanted to your face, and that makes me angry, because I had so much left to say." I stopped there, a sob breaking free before I could stop it. I pressed the paper to my chest, then forced myself to keep going. "I know what they've been telling you about me. I know what he's been telling you about me. And I need you to understand something very clearly. One of those versions is a lie." My vision blurred. I wiped my eyes and read on, my heart pounding harder with every line. "I never believed what he said about you. Not once. I watched you grow into someone strong, stubborn, and kind, even when the world tried to teach you otherwise. If anyone tells you I was ashamed, they are protecting themselves, not my memory." I felt dizzy. The room seemed to tilt as I read those words again, slower this time. "If anyone tells you I was ashamed." There was more. Names, dates, specific conversations she'd written down in careful detail. Times my dad had come to her worried about me, telling her stories that didn't match the life I was actually living. Times she confronted him, only to be brushed off or accused of favoritism. Near the end of the letter, my breath caught. I left copies of this letter and other documents with someone I trust. If he ever tries to rewrite me, or you, those papers will surface. I stared at that sentence until the words swum. Someone I trust. My phone buzzed on the floor beside me, snapping me out of the trance. A text from my dad. "We need to talk. I heard you got something in the mail." My blood ran cold. I hadn't told anyone about the letter. Not my aunt, not my friends, no one. I picked up the phone slowly, my fingers hovering over the screen as another message came through. "You should be careful with old papers. They can be misunderstood." I looked back down at Grandma's handwriting, at the quiet certainty in her words, and for the first time since the funeral, something other than grief took hold in my chest. Not relief, not peace. Something sharp and electric. Because if my dad knew about the letter, then he knew about the copies too, and I had a feeling I was about to find out exactly how far he'd gone to make sure I never saw them. I didn't reply to his text right away. I just sat there on the floor, the letter spread open in my lap like it was something alive, something breathing. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, in my ears, in my fingertips. The idea that he knew, somehow knew, about the letter made my skin prickle with a kind of fear I hadn't felt since I was a kid hiding in my room, listening to my parents argue downstairs and wondering if my name was going to come up next. I read Grandma's words again, slower this time, like if I absorbed them deeply enough, they could shield me. I left copies of this letter and other documents with someone I trust. Someone I trust. My mind raced through names. My aunt, an old family friend, maybe even a lawyer? I remembered Grandma always saying, "You don't wait for trouble to knock, you lock the door before it shows up." I hadn't taken that seriously when she was alive. Now I wished I had. My phone buzzed again in my hand. "Dad, I'm coming by tomorrow. We shouldn't let misunderstandings turn into something bigger." Misunderstandings. I let out a shaky breath and stood up, pacing my small living room. The walls felt too close suddenly, like the air itself was listening. I picked up the envelope and slid it back inside the larger one, my hands moving carefully, almost reverently. I tucked it into my backpack, then hesitated before pulling it back out and slipping it into a drawer beneath my bed instead. Even that felt risky. I didn't sleep much that night. Every sound outside my apartment made me tense. A car door slamming, footsteps in the hallway, my phone lighting up on the nightstand. I kept imagining my dad's voice, calm and disappointed, explaining things to me the way he always had, like I was confused, like the truth was something only he could interpret correctly. By morning, my eyes burned and my head ached, but a strange clarity settled over me. I couldn't unsee the letter. I couldn't unknow what Grandma had written. Whatever my dad had been doing all these years, it wasn't impulsive. It was careful, planned. And if he was worried now, it meant something was slipping out of his control. I went to work on autopilot, smiling when spoken to, answering emails without really reading them. Around noon, my aunt called. "Did you get it?" she asked without even saying hello. My stomach flipped. "Get what?" There was a pause, then a quiet exhale. "So he hasn't told you yet." "Told me what?" I pressed, lowering my voice as I stepped into an empty conference room. "She made me promise not to interfere unless he crossed a line," my aunt said softly. I think he just did." My heart started racing again. "Aunt Carol, what are you talking about?" "She knew he'd try to control the story. She was afraid you'd blame yourself, that you'd believe him." I sank into one of the chairs, my knees weak. "You knew about the letter." "Yes," she said, "and more." More. That word hung between us, heavy and dangerous. "Where are the copies?" I asked. They're not with me, and before you ask, I can't tell you where they are. Not yet. Why not? My voice cracked despite my effort to keep it steady. Because he listens, and he pushes, and he knows how to make people talk. A chill ran through me. He's coming to see me tomorrow. I figured, she said. He called me last night, asked some very specific questions. About me? About what your grandmother said near the end, about who was in the room, about what she signed. Signed? My grip tightened on the phone. What did she sign? Another pause, longer this time. I can't say, but I need you to promise me something. What? Don't confront him yet, and don't give him the letter. If he thinks he's already lost control, he'll do something reckless. I closed my eyes, Grandma's words flashing through my mind again. If he ever tries to rewrite me or you, those papers will surface. He already thinks I have something, I said quietly. He texted me about it. He knows, so now the clock's moving faster than she planned. When the call ended, I sat there staring at the blank wall, my reflection faint in the glass. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt hunted. That evening, I drove home with my mirrors adjusted just a little too often, my chest tight every time a familiar car appeared behind me. When I reached my apartment, I noticed something small but wrong immediately. The drawer under my bed was closed. I was almost certain I'd left it cracked open. My breath caught as I stepped inside, locking the door behind me with shaking hands. The apartment smelled the same, looked the same, but the air felt disturbed, like someone had been there and tried very hard to leave no trace. I dropped my bag and knelt by the bed, slowly pulling the drawer open. The envelope was still there, but it was thinner. I pulled it out and opened it, my hands trembling now, panic surging like a wave. My phone buzzed again in my hand. We need to talk about what Grandma really meant. I stared at the note until my vision blurred, my pulse roaring in my ears. My phone buzzed in the exact same moment. Dad was calling, and I had no idea how long he'd been inside my apartment, or what else he might have taken with him. I let the phone ring. I stood there in the middle of my bedroom, the note shaking in my hand, my ears ringing so loudly it felt like the room itself was humming. Every instinct in me screamed not to answer. Not yet. Not while my heart was doing this frantic, panicked sprint against my ribs. The call stopped. A second later, my phone buzzed again. A text this time. Dad, you left your door unlocked. We really need to talk. My stomach dropped. I backed up until my calves hit the edge of the bed, then sat down hard. My apartment had always been my safe place, small, imperfect, but mine. Knowing he'd been inside it, had moved through my things, knelt where I was kneeling now, made my skin crawl. I typed, deleted, then finally sent, "You had no right to come in." The reply came almost instantly. I knocked. I stared at that lie, heat rising in my chest. You stole something that wasn't yours. Another pause, longer this time. I protected you, he wrote. You just don't understand yet. I laughed, a sharp, broken sound that echoed too loudly in the room. Protecting me had always been his favorite excuse, protecting me from embarrassment, from failure, from myself. It was how he wrapped control in something that sounded like care. My phone rang again. I answered this time, my voice steadier than I felt. You broke into my apartment. You left the door unlocked, he said calmly, too calmly. And don't raise your voice, I'm not the enemy here. You took her letter. Give it back. He sighed, the sound heavy and practiced. Your grandmother was confused near the end. You know that. No, I said, my hand tightening around the phone. I know she wasn't. She was emotional, he continued, like he hadn't heard me. She had a lot of resentment toward me, toward everyone, and she loved you too much sometimes. That kind of love can twist things. I closed my eyes, fighting the urge to scream. "You told me she died ashamed of me." Another sigh. "That's not what I said." "Yes, it is." "I said she was worried," he corrected smoothly, "about the path you were on." My chest burned. "You said she knew the truth about me." "And she did," he replied. "She knew you struggled. She knew you didn't always make the best choices. You're rewriting this, just like she said you would." There it was, silence on the other end. Not the casual, dismissive silence he usually used, but something tighter, controlled. "So you did read it," he said finally. "Yes," I said, my voice shaking now despite my effort. "And I know you've been lying about me, to her, to everyone. That letter never should have been left for you. It was irresponsible. Give it back." "I can't," he said simply. "Why not?" "Because it isn't safe, not for you." My laugh came out brittle. "Or for you?" His tone hardened just slightly. "Watch yourself." The threat was subtle, but it landed all the same. I hung up before he could say anything else, my hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I sat there for a long moment, listening to my own breathing, the apartment feeling more violated by the second. I called my aunt. "He took it," I said as soon as she answered. "He took Grandma's letter." Her inhale was sharp. "Then he's panicking." I added, "He broke into my apartment. He knew exactly where it was." "That means he's been watching, or someone told him." The idea made my stomach twist. Who else knew? Very few people, and none of them would have helped him. Unless he'd scared them, or guilted them, or convinced them it was for my own good. "What about the copies? Are they safe?" "Yes," she said firmly. "But hearing this, I think it's time." "Time for what?" "For you to know more, but not over the phone." My pulse spiked again. "What do you mean?" "I mean there's a reason she put things in writing, and a reason she didn't give everything directly to you." Before I could ask anything else, she added, "He's going to try to see you again, soon, in person." As if summoned by her words, a knock sounded at my door. 3 slow, deliberate taps. I froze. My eyes snapped to the door, my breath catching in my throat. My phone buzzed in my hand. "Dad, I'm outside. We need to talk, now." I looked around my apartment, at the place that suddenly felt like a trap instead of a refuge. I thought about the missing letter, the copies I hadn't seen, the things Grandma might have signed that my aunt couldn't tell me about yet. The knock came again, louder this time. I didn't know whether opening that door would make things clearer or unravel everything she'd been trying to protect. And I had the sinking feeling that whatever my dad had taken from me tonight wasn't the only thing he was trying to get back. I didn't open the door. I stood there, my back pressed against the kitchen counter, listening to his breathing on the other side like he owned the air in my apartment. The knock came again, firmer, impatient. I thought of Grandma's hands, how steady they were even when her voice shook, and I knew what she would have told me if she were standing there with me. "Don't argue in the dark. Turn on the light." "I'm not letting you in," I said through the door, my voice clearer than I felt. There was a pause. Then his tone shifted, softer, almost hurt. "You're making this bigger than it needs to be." "You already did," I said, "when you lied about her, when you took something that wasn't yours." Silence stretched. I imagined him weighing options the way he always did. What angle still worked, what mask to put back on. "You think a piece of paper changes anything?" he asked. "It changes everything," I said. My phone buzzed in my hand, a text from my aunt. "They're ready. The copies, the witness. If you want this to stop, it stops tonight." My heart hammered. I took a breath and said, "I know about what she signed." That did it. The air on the other side of the door felt charged. "You don't know what you're talking about," he snapped. I know she prepared for this, I said. I know she knew you'd try to erase her words and mine. Another pause. Longer. Heavy. You'll regret this, he said quietly. I already did, I replied, for years. I stepped back, unlocked the door just enough to slide the envelope through, the one my aunt had emailed me earlier, printed and sealed at the copy shop down the street. I didn't hand it to him. I let it fall to the floor between us. Read it. Or don't. It's already been sent. He looked down. I watched his face change as he scanned the first page. Grandma's signature at the bottom, the notary stamp, the date. Then the second page. Then the third. The color drained from his cheeks. What is this? He whispered. Her voice, I said. Unedited. He looked up at me then, really looked, like he was seeing a stranger. You're choosing this over your own father? I'm choosing the truth, I said. She did too. His mouth opened, then closed. For once, there was nothing left to twist, no story to spin. He picked up the papers with shaking hands. This doesn't leave this hallway, he said. It already did. And if you ever say her name to hurt me again, there's more. He stared at me for a long moment, then he turned and walked away without another word. I locked the door and slid down against it, my body finally giving in. I cried then, quiet, shaking sobs, but they weren't the kind that hollow you out. They felt like something being returned. Later, I called my aunt. She didn't say, I told you so. She just said, she'd be proud. I went to bed with Grandma's letter copied and safe, her handwriting alive again in my hands, her truth finally louder than his lies. And for the first time since the phone call that started all of this, I slept without hearing his voice in my head, because